Hey everyone, I want to talk about something that is not really a tutorial. Like, this video is not going to teach you necessarily how to draw a specific thing, but it's a change in mindset that has really helped me. And I hope it helps some of you as well. And it's really applicable whenever you're encountering a difficult problem in, I guess, art or maybe anything. And you don't know how to overcome that difficult problem. The solution I found is to start with this question, which is, what do I know? And when I think about that, it helps to clarify things, and it sort of gives me a fighting chance at whatever the problem is. So I figured the best thing I can do is to walk you through different scenarios where I use the same what do you know idea, and hopefully that will just kind of get across the philosophy, because that's really what I think is important, is to have the philosophy, to have this idea that, okay, I start with asking myself, what do I know? And then I build on that. But what it also requires is kind of getting rid of, you may not have it, but I certainly had it a few years back, especially, is sort of an artistic ego. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's certain things like, for instance, how do I want to be perceived by other people? And I didn't even know this was such a heavy weight that was always on my mind. But because especially before, because I haven't done it in a while, but because I make YouTube videos from time to time, I would be very aware of, how do I look? Like, for instance, I want to draw everything from imagination. I don't want to have like a reference here, right? And then I'm like looking at the reference and drawing. I just wanted to be one of those people who could kind of like the late Kim Jong-gi, just here's a blank page. I just draw, and then obviously this is a lot worse than Kim Jong-gi, but something happens and it looks cool and everyone's like, wow, aren't you great? Specifically because for me, I felt like if I don't do a good job of drawing, people aren't going to take whatever advice I have. They're not going to take it seriously. Like, they're going to be like, well, this guy can't even draw. Why am I listening to this person? And I sort of agree with that too. Like, in a sense, you should be able to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Now I'm not so sure, because I've seen a lot of teachers who can walk the walk, but who can't talk the talk. And it's more like, well, they can impress you, but will they help you personally improve? I don't know. So anyway, I had this idea that, I need to be at least somewhat impressive. I need to show that I know what I'm doing so people will take me seriously. And that held me back so much, because when I stopped making videos and I was just left with commissions or working on my comic, everything started to change. I stopped having this idea of, oh, people are going to see this stuff. And it just became, especially with like work, it just became like sort of a mercenary who's told, get rid of this target and you can do it any way you want. Like, I don't care how you do it. We just want this target eliminated. Something like that. So once I started thinking that way, everything sort of opened up to me. All these ideas that I would think, no, I don't want to do that because that'll look bad. For instance, using reference, or even worse than that, like tracing over reference, using 3D models, all that type of stuff just became, it's not about me and my ego and how good do I look. It's about what is the best thing to get the job done. So I had to get rid of that mindset and switch to the everything is fine so long as it works. And one of the things is that actually surprised me is that some of the things I thought lead to worse art, like tracing over things, for instance, it actually helped me improve more. So let me give you an example. So let's say I have this hand, right? And it's I want to draw this, and it's in a difficult position. So before, maybe I would, look at it and I would, let's see if I can do it this way. I might look in a mirror because, drawing from a mirror is better than just using a photo or something like that. And I try and, break it down. And that's fine. But if it's particularly difficult, what would happen is I would find myself just sort of copying. Like, I'll be looking at this angle and like trying to get that angle right. And then just focusing on copying what I see and creating an image that looks, like this. But I would think like, well, I'm learning a lot more this way because I'm having to draw. But am I really learning a lot more that way? I feel like I wasn't. What I was doing was I was just getting better at measuring angles and looking at this angle here and trying to replicate it here. Right? Like that's an abstract shape. It doesn't really matter. So what I found actually was more effective was to do this, where I would just look at this, and then I'm gonna just basically draw over it, kind of like tracing. But here's the thing, I'm not gonna trace mindlessly. Like, I'm not going to do it like this, where I look at, I'm just sort of like, I'm using the wrong color, where I'm just following the outline or anything like that. Like, that is bad, I would say. This is not helping me. What I would do is I would consider that I was drawing this, and I would look at it very carefully and try to pick up things. So for instance, I would look like, okay, well, there's like this plane here. And then I would think about what wouldn't I have noticed, right? Like I might not have noticed how this knuckle it's pretty small, like it's very foreshortened. And that's sort of in shadow, and this is sort of in shadow. And I'm sort of breaking things down as if this is not a photo, but sort of like this is an underdrawing and it's my own drawing, and I'm just trying to figure out, all right, how does that work? So how does this apply to the what do you know? Well, what I do know is I want this pose. So I take this pose, right? That's what I do know. I want this type of difficult pose. So what did I do? Well, I took a picture of the pose that I know I want. Now, do I want to be copying and reliant on reference? No, not necessarily. But currently, it helps because I do know that I want this pose. So let's say I do that. Okay, I get the basic structure down. I start to, okay, here's where this finger comes out. And you sort of can see the structure. This knuckle sort of shows. And then I kind of hate my hands, by the way. So this is difficult for me because I'm quite self-conscious about my hands. I feel like, I don't know. It's a weird thing. Anyway, so I get something like this, all right? And it's like, okay, yeah, I like that. I've captured the pose, and maybe it's not, perfect in terms of what I want, but now I've got that. Okay, so now I turn off the photo and I look at this again, and then I start to ask myself, what do I know in terms of what I want? So let's say this is not for me. This I'm not drawing a character who's me. I'm drawing a character maybe who's a woman. Okay, so what do I know? Well, women's hands and fingers are, like, I have pretty feminine hands already, but they're more tapered, they're more like smooth. So what do I know? Well, I want it to be, kind of more smooth, probably smaller a little bit. Maybe the thumb is smaller. I still want to maintain sort of the shapes, but I want them to be more simplified. So then I'll make a pass where it's like, okay, let me try and do that. So exactly what I said, I want it to be smoother. Maybe I make the hand a bit smaller. I reduce the size of that wrist, make the fingers a bit more thin. Maybe then the fingers more tapered at the end. And so I kind of want to maintain that thing of that going back into space. So maybe I don't want to exaggerate the knuckles too much. Maybe this one, it's fine. But I'm thinking about, you know, like, what do I want and what do I know and how do I get that? And then I'll just try. But this, to me, would have been pretty taboo before. You know, so I'm just making alterations based on what I want and what I do know. So I want the thumb to be a bit smaller, so I'm just going to change that. So you can see I'm already kind of deviating from the reference, but I used it. And again, kind of like a mercenary, like everything's all right. But if you ask me, you know, did I learn more from doing this or from doing this, where I was just sort of, you know, looking and trying to measure angles? I actually learned more doing this because it's faster. I can focus more on shapes and I can think about those things. So now I can get rid of that. And now I have this hand and it's like, all right. And then I could ask myself, you know, what's the next step? Well, I want it to look kind of stylized more, or maybe I want it inked or something. Okay, so let's try inking it. When I start with a pencil and I'm like, all right, maybe I'll shrink the brush a bit, get a bit more of a finer line. And you know, maybe I actually want to do a pass on it first where I think more about the structure. You know, maybe I'm like thinking, all right, so I want to kind of understand this. So this finger is kind of going more back. So I changed the angle that way, which would make this kind of more straight and this one more curved. So something like that. So I'm kind of like working it out. And then maybe I want to have more of this type of shape. You know, it's a bit more stylized. It's not really as realistic, but I kind of like the shape. So let's run with that. And then this foreshortening, you know, maybe that's not conveying it well enough that like that foreshortening's a bit tricky. So maybe I'm going to exaggerate the fact that it kind of comes, you know, there's an angle change here. And then I do something like this. So kind of shifting it a bit. And the thing is, if you are kind of correct, like it's mostly right, people will start to, like, they'll just accept it. It'll look fine. Maybe I want this finger to be shorter. And this one is fine. And then the thumb, you know, maybe I'm going to push it out more like that. All right. Okay, so to me, this is still fine. This still registers as hand. And if I compare it to the original now, see how it's quite different? But I'm able to think still. Like, I can still remember, okay, well, this part was in shadow, right? And then there was a bit of a shadow coming here. Maybe I want that. Maybe I don't. Maybe I want a completely different lighting scenario. But anyway, okay, let's move to the inking stage. So let's say I start inking, and I'm like, all right, this is fine. I'm like inking it, but then I just feel like at the end, it just feels a bit boring. It feels a bit stiff. And then I'll ask myself, okay, what do I know? Well, I know that the lines are more stiff than I want them. They feel boring. They feel dull. Okay. They feel dull. They feel boring. How would you make it more exciting? Maybe if they weren't all like one line width, right? Maybe if it was more exciting in the line, that might work. Because I know I want excitement. I want this to feel cool. I want it to feel like stylized and energetic and stuff. Okay. So you know the line has to be energetic. You know the line, you don't want it to be boring, so not boring. All right, and for myself, I like sharp stuff. Okay, well, can you make a line that does that? And for myself, it's like, all right, I tried. So I came up with this brush that I use, and it's like this. It's very crazy, but it does a lot of stuff. It's very interesting. Like if I make words, you can see how it's got a bunch of like variety in it. It's a bit too much actually, but I find when I use it, it's very interesting. Like it's just fun to, oh, and that could be another thing. What do you know? I know I want to have fun. All right. How are we going to do that? Because I usually didn't like inking. I didn't like any kind of thing like that. It was just boring to me. But when I started doing it this way, it got a bit more fun. So, okay. Let's say I use this brush, and now there's a bunch of cases where it does this thing where like too much ink comes out. Maybe I'll shrink it a little bit. But I still like to keep it pretty thin and then just use like kind of lines where I really vary the pressure. And this is obviously, you know, it's different for every person, but I like the look of this. You might hate it, and that's fine, you know. Don't do it then. Don't use a brush like this. But for me, it's kind of fun because the lines come out very interesting. So there's a lot of like line width, and I have to like use this very lightly, but if I use it extremely lightly, I get thin lines like this. But if I press harder, I can go all the way to like that thick. So the amount of variety is huge. But anyway, okay, so putting this down and just gonna speed it up. I remember there was a knuckle there somewhere. I like this type of thing with the wrist. I didn't really notice it. I mean, I kind of did, but not as much as I didn't know how to do it so well until I started drawing from photos more. Is, you know, how you go in like that and then come down. And then if I do want to draw from imagination, it's like, well, I'll remember that, you know. Okay, so here's this part and it goes like that. And then let's say it's a different pose. Yeah, but I still remember that. So for that reason, I started improving in ways that were like not really available to me before, simply because I was thinking about ego more. I was thinking more about like, well, you know, that's not right in a way, because I mean, it's almost like, what if the neighbors saw you? You know, like tracing on a photo to start with. Oh my god, that's terrible. But actually it's just how you do when you have to, especially when you have deadlines and stuff and you're doing commercial work, you just do whatever it takes to get the job done. So yeah, you can hide all that. And no one's going to see where your image came from. They're just going to see the final image. So maybe I'm going to put like shadows where I think they should go. Yeah, using this brush is not great for laying in shadows. I shouldn't be doing it with this brush. Let's switch to like a different brush. But yeah, let's say I'm putting shadows in like that. This part. I mean, whatever, you know. I generally won't use black for shadows, but just to give you a sense of, like, okay, maybe you do something like this. All right, people are just gonna look at this final result, and they're not gonna look at just how you accomplished what you're doing. They're just gonna say, okay, well, does that look good? And if it does, it's fine, and we move on. And if it doesn't, it's so easy to change. So what if I was coloring this? Or let's just say the shadow, right? Like, because I mentioned I wasn't really happy with the shadow. Okay, So what do I do about it? Well, one of the things I can do is just change it. All right, so not that one, this one. So let's say I fill it with this. Okay, now I've got this blue-ish shadow. Maybe I want a different color. I don't want blue. So I can just open up my hue saturation and then shift it. So you can do all sorts of things to get an interesting result. You don't have to rely on like, when I say what do you know, it's kind of find out what little you know and use that as a clue to figure out the rest. So for instance, maybe I look at it and it's like, well, I don't want black shadows. Okay, that's what I do know. I don't want black shadows. So maybe I want colored shadows. What color? I don't know. Can we solve that I don't know thing? Can we solve it by like, what if we just opened up hue saturation, put down any color, and then just adjusted it until it's the right color? Like, look at it. It's too saturated. Okay, desaturate it. It's too dark. Lighten it. You know, like keep doing what you need to do until you get the result that you want. So maybe that's the result I want. And then it's like, okay, cool. Maybe I want to have some color. Did you know? Okay, so I'm using Clip Studio to draw this. Did you know about this thing where I've known about it for a while, but I don't think I've talked about it. And I shared it with a student. They seemed very surprised. Where you can... Okay, let's say I want to color this hand. You can like colorize things quickly. Let's just pick a... Doesn't even have to be perfect. Let's say that's a skin tone, right? And let's say I kind of want it to get a bit more red at the knuckles. I can do this, and then I can go to Edit, Colorize. Oh wait, first I have to go to the drawing and I have to set it as a reference layer. This is only for Clip Studio. And then you go to your thing, Edit, Colorize, use hint to image and colorize. And then it does stuff like that. Like it just like colors the image. It's a bit weird. Sometimes it works better than other times, but sometimes you can get a pretty cool result. So here I didn't color the thumb in enough, but, and so go back and let's just put some color on that thumb. And it kind of works. Let's say I want the background to be a bit blue here. And then you just lay down whatever and colorize. Use hint image and colorize. And then, whoa, you know, it's all right. You can see how, well, maybe as a base that will start to work. Right. Anyway, it's just a thing I completely unrelated, but think you get the idea about that. So let's go back to some scenarios about what do I know. So that was just a use photo reference. That's not the crux of this video. Don't take it as that. Like maybe this is like 10 videos in one. Probably it is, and I'm sorry for that if it's overkill. Okay. So what else? Let's say I want to do an image and I have a rug and it's in perspective. So like, let's say it's a room and I have a rug here and it's like a fancy rug, right? There's a bunch of stuff going on. And I'm just feeling overwhelmed. Like I want to do this intricate rug and then I have to draw it in perspective. And it's going to be really difficult. And then there's also stuff in the room I want, like, you know, I kind of want to have, maybe there's like a dresser here and there's like a bunch of stuff. And it's so much and I don't even know where to begin. Okay, the first thing I'll do is ask myself, what do I know? Okay, well, I'll think about the room layout and I'll think like, well, I want a dresser here. I want a rug here. Maybe there's like a door here. And you know, maybe there's like a flower pot here and there's a fireplace. So I'm looking at it in plan view, right? So here's the rug. All right. So that's kind of what I do know, is that that kind of is where stuff is. Maybe there's a sofa here and one here. There's like a table here. Okay. So now what I'll do, because I know that, I know the basic stuff, I reduce it to what do I know? Like, I know this. Yeah, but that's not a fancy, cool image like what you had in your head, right? It's like, yeah, it's not. So how do we help ourselves? Well, that's what I do know. Okay. So can we take this and then just put that into the perspective that I was looking for? Maybe we can. So let's see, the rug was much lower. And let's say it was like that. And so I'm just using the digital tools to figure out, you know, well, here's where I want things. Okay, so now I know where things are on the ground. Now I just have to go up and sort of make this kind of three-dimensional. Because I've got a basic perspective, it's so much easier for me to just guess at how big things should be. I kind of want this to be taller, but still, it's much easier to guess how big or how small things should be because I have some information down now. I can work with that. I can sort of interpret things. And again, I don't have to plot perspective too crazily. And remember with the hand, how we deviated quite a bit from the photo? Like, it wasn't the same hand at the end as what the photo was. But it didn't look incredibly wrong. That's because humans we're not that dumb. We can kind of interpret what things were supposed to be. And, like, sure, if you're doing this for some kind of industrial design like this or architectural thing, all these things matter. They have to be kind of perfect. But if you're just doing it as I want a background or I want it to look cool or something, I want to get that feeling across, then do you need to make it so fancy? No, probably not. Probably don't need to, doesn't need to be that crazy for you to get an idea. And then, like, well, I know there's the, sofas here. Now I can start to make value judgments. For instance, if this is the room, this is how big the room is, how big would a person be? And let's say like this big. Again, very sloppy. The reason I'm doing it sloppy is because I have no interest, or it wouldn't help me to draw this as a super, let me, spend a bunch of time and draw a face and everything. It's like, no. I just need a rough thing of how big is a person roughly. Okay, so a person's that big. So if this person was to sit on this couch, how big would they be? Like, kind of that big. Okay, where'd the armrest go? Go about to there. All right, and then the back would go like there. So I'm giving myself information I can use to now solve problems. Like, I used this person to figure out how big this person, or how big this couch should be in this space. And then if I have this couch and it's sort of, I don't know, it's not detailed, but it's like, it's got information, then I can start to look at this and my own experience, my own memory will kind of tell me if it feels right or wrong and what's wrong with it and how to change it. So I'm not really using like perspective as much as I'm using intuition now. And it's just helped make art a lot more fun for me. So again, here we said there's a table here, right? So, okay, well, it's not going to, the big part of the table, is it just called the table? The surface of the table, it's going to be up here, right? So it's not on the ground, it's up here. So I can do that. And then, okay, that's kind of where it is. And trying to imagine like a cylinder here. going up in what looks right to me. And then the middle, there's like going to be a pillar on the ground that touches. So I just work out the middle of where that would be. And then I go up. And now I know, I can erase all this extra part, that roughly this is kind of how the table goes. And maybe I want a stronger pedestal or whatever it's called at the base of that. But now I know where my table is, It's roughly in place. That's what I do know now. So I've added, before I started with, I don't know anything. Then I did this. And it's like, okay, I know some things. Then I use those few things that I know to make more educated guesses. Okay, but remember we talked about that rug? How it was like, we wanted it to be elaborate. And sorry, I'm going through digital tools in Clip Studio that you may not have Clip Studio. It's not really about the program itself. Again, try and get the thinking involved, because you can do this even traditionally. You can use, well, no, not for this. It's not as easy to do this, but you can kind of plot it perspective-wise traditionally, or you could even use 3D or anything like that. But it just is about the idea. So forgive me if I use tools that you don't necessarily have, but remember that it's not so much about that. It's not like, oh, but you've got this tool. It's more about how do you apply that? And maybe it'll help people in some way. Okay, so I want to create a rug. So first thing I'm going to do is, let's just do it this way. Okay, layer, ruler, perspective ruler. Do I want a perspective ruler? No, I want a special ruler. Okay, so I'll go to the rulers, special ruler, and then, symmetrical ruler. Okay, so if I make this ruler, then I draw, change to a brush. Okay, so now see how if I draw on this side, that goes on that side too. And maybe I want it to be, let's see if I can change that. Symmetry, number of lines, 2. So maybe I also want it symmetrical this way. Okay, so now I'm not sure if this is gonna work. Okay, that's kind of what I wanted, but I also wanted it here. Can I make it both? Sorry, this is kind of dumb. What if I make it, that's how you do it. Okay, so I make it 4. Then let's say I do this, and then, okay, that's cool. And then I do this. Nice. Right, so what I want is this rug, and I want it, I can look at the dimensions and kind of like, okay, kind of want it like that. See how messy it is? See how like, it's not perfect? I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm not trying to make the finished image. I'm just trying to help myself with what I do know. So maybe I want it to be sort of elaborate. So it's got like some patterns to it. There's like stuff here, and I want it to look detailed, but that doesn't mean I need to draw it perfectly. It just means I need to create stuff. And with the symmetry ruler, it sure is making my life easier, right? Like it's helping to it already kind of feels fancy, right? So maybe within this, there's some more shapes, and all right. Good enough, right? For now. Let's say that's my ruler. Okay, so now let's just remove, can I delete? Yeah, delete ruler. Okay, so now I just have this. But I also have this, right? I have where let's just duplicate this. I have where the rug should go, and I'm gonna change the color, because I can, to green, just so it's easier to see. I'm gonna take that, and just gonna, you hold down Control like I press Control T to select to make it transformable. And I'm just putting these points into the corners where I had already said I want the rug. Right, like I want the rug there, and I might have to adjust it a bit, like so. But now I have my complicated rug in perspective. Now what I can do is, let's say I wanted it, it's like, yeah, but I don't want it to be all green and whatever. I want it to be inked properly. Oh, okay. So now with this problem of, remember initially it was like, oh, I want this thing with the rug in perspective and it's very difficult and whatever. This should be more like that. Anyway, and then I was like, oh, but it's in a room and all that's complicated and I don't know where things go. Now I kind of do. There's quite a bit of information that I actually have. I can say, for instance, like this part of the rug, I don't want that to show because that's over the couch. This is the table. I'm just erasing it. There. Now I have all of this information. Maybe I don't, like the fact that it says rug here is distracting, so I just erase that. And now I can just focus on, you know, making that look better. And again, this is something that, because before I kind of tried to do everything at once, I tried to work out the perspective right away, get all the information down. Maybe I would have drawn this and then I would have thought about, well, I want a rug, okay, and everything's got to be symmetrical, so I got to take these to a vanishing point back there and make an X, and then I find the center point, and then this goes to that vanishing point as well. And then I've got to make some patterns, but I wouldn't be free enough. I'd probably make like weak patterns around this, and it will look like, well, that's not cool. That's not how I envisioned it in my head. It was a lot cooler in my head. Like this was supposed to be this like sort of Persian rug, and it was supposed to look really cool. But now, because I've got all this done, I can sort of put that information down. So, you know, I'm not going to go ahead and do all of this. You kind of get the idea, right? So let's move on to another thing, another example. And I think for the sake of this video, it's getting pretty long. I'll make this the last example. But let's say I wanted a character and they've got a lot on them. They've got like fancy, they got a fancy outfit. And I want them in a very cool pose, and it's very dynamic, and there's a lot of perspective and stuff. Okay, so if I try to do that, and often this is what happens, people will be like, okay, I've got this idea, and it's this cool character, and they're like, you know, in this dynamic pose, and they'll try and draw everything, and it's like, okay, so what do I have to juggle right now? I have to juggle, what is the character design? What is the perspective? What is the pose? What is the outfit? What are the proportions? Everything. It's like, no wonder it's so hard. And this is what I used to deal with. Maybe you do too. Like situations where it's like, oh, I can't draw. I'm not good. I can't do this. And you know, sometimes you'll watch tutorials and it's like how to ink or how to color, but they've already got the drawing done. And it's kind of like, yeah, but you know, that, don't worry about that. I start with a sketch and then I move on to, and it's like, yeah, but that sketch has all the difficult information. How'd you get it? How'd you get that? Did you use reference? We don't know, right? We don't know. That is the difficult part, right? Like this part, the getting all the things, that's difficult. Once you've got the sketch, coloring is easy. You saw how, you know, can use many ways of coloring. But anyway, the point is that you don't want to overwhelm yourself with everything at once. So what I would do is I'd start with basic character, get that worked out. You know, first maybe what's just the proportions? Maybe that's it, proportions. Or I'd look at that and I'd say, I know, what do I know? I know my character is short and doesn't look like that. Okay, maybe. Okay, so let's make like a short, and see how simple it is. It's just basic, like I'm not trying to get it to be a good drawing. I'm trying to solve problems. I'm trying to give myself information. Okay, this is what I want. All right? Cool. Now, like I know that much, but that's not, that's just roughly the shape, but I know, where the features are. I want it to them to have certain hair and whatever. So you deal with the next problem, deal with the next one, deal with the next one. Each time you're working on more stuff. Okay. What I wanted to show is more like, how can you come up with poses? Well, I can start by saying, and this is how I do a lot of stuff. I know I want to, let's say I'm doing like a picture where there's a guy and they're like punching towards a screen, right? Okay. So what do I know? Well, I know I want them punching towards a screen. I want it to have lots of energy. I know they're going to have a head. So like the head's, here's the head, right? Okay. So what else do I know? I want them punching, and I want the fist to be big. All right. I want the fist to be big. So I want it to be like, I'm not going to draw the neck and the shoulder, and because I don't know where the fist is in this, but I do know if I look at this, it's like, where is it in relation to the head? It's like, I want it like really big and like that, where it's even like kind of covering a part of the face. All right, so there's the fist. It's like it's taking up this much space. It's kind of in that shape. All right, so now I have like a head and I have a fist. Okay, what else do I know? I know people have shoulders. Okay, so like, where's the shoulder? Well, it's gonna be, if I think about it, and maybe I'll look in a mirror and I just look and I see, okay, maybe like it just shows up a bit. We don't even see much of it. And a good way to do this is looking in mirrors. This is really, really useful. And then I know like, okay, well, if I look in the mirror and I make a fist and whatever, and where's the body? And like, oh, I want it to be dynamic. I'm going to angle it. And like, maybe I didn't. Maybe I drew it here first. And then I'm like, that looks so stiff. Why does it look stiff? Like that, what do I know? It looks stiff. What can I do about that problem? Maybe, like, what's wrong? What's making it look stiff? Well, it's so up and down, it's so vertical. It just feels like kind of stiff and boring. Okay, what if I don't make it vertical? What if I make it like at an angle? What if I put the leg, coming out like that, and then the other one is going there? Okay, is that sort of what I had in mind? Yeah, but I want the head like sort of tilted, where it's not just, like that. It's like that more. And then they're like glaring, and it's like very anime default thing. It's like, okay, so now I have this, and of course before I've already worked out the character design, so I'm not worried about that, but I have all this information. Now maybe the thing is, okay, but I don't know how to draw that fist, and maybe that's where I look up reference, or maybe I find reference for a pose like this. Maybe I just look in the mirror and I find my own, I use my own body to give me a hint of where things should be. So then I get like this general sense. Okay, now when I lower the opacity down, when I do a second pass, I've got so much more information than I started with. Because I'm not starting with a blank page and drawing, like trying to draw the character and, what they should be looking like. I'm starting with this, so I can like say, okay, well, I know, what do I know? And then I break that down. And of course, because I've been doing it for a while now, many decades, I know some stuff, so I can apply that. But it's definitely made life easier going this way. And again, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to do everything, because you still have to gain experience. You have to, it helps to know how to draw and stuff. But it definitely, if you do have some ability, you're working at a much higher level than you may have considered you could do. And also, it's a lot closer to maybe what you aspire to, like with the image in your head. And then when you can achieve things that are closer to what you like, then it encourages you to draw more. You know, maybe I have parts like sort of moving, and maybe we have speed lines and whatever. And then one could argue, well, that's very messy. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't have to be, because this is just one part of it. I can then say, like, oh, he's wearing boots. Am I going to just draw the boots all done? Or am I going to say, well, you know, roughly where are they? And this is another thing I do, which is, last tip. I really should have made these like 10 videos. But anyway, I do this method where instead of drawing around a thing, and I do this a lot for eyes, so let's just make it simpler, and I'll just draw an eye. Okay, so here's an eye, right? Let's say. Okay, rather than do this where I try and, like, where am I looking? And then, you know, you try and make your eye, and then it's not quite right. What I'll do is I'll think about just a dot to show like where the pupil is and where they're looking. Like they're kind of like the pupil's like right there. Then what I'll do is I'll kind of start at that dot, because I know that's where I'm looking. I'm making like circles and making the iris bigger and bigger until it feels right. But I started from the inside and went out, so I control how big it looks. You know, if it was, I didn't like it, I can kind of go back and adjust the shape. But because I'm starting from the middle and going out, it's very easy to control the shape. Then when I have the shape right and I draw over it, it's like, where would the pupil go? Like there. And then I can even, you know, kind of deviate from this perfectly round shape. I can be more like loose with my drawing, because I know, you know, like all this placement is done. I don't have to think about that. So now I'm free to use all that mental energy. I just do, you know, I just can focus on what I wanted to focus on. And the person is looking where I wanted them to look, because I did it in the easy way. I didn't do it in the hard way. And again, that ego thing of, oh, I want to draw like, you know, Ahmed Al-Duri or Cynics or something. It's like, these things would get to me, because it's like, well, yeah, I respect them and what they do is cool. But is it more important that I draw like them, or that I get an image I'm happy with that is conveying what I want to convey? And that's when I started to realize the power of story. Like, what really is important in an image is not just your ego of being an artist. Like, I'm an artist and I draw and I can draw and look at me, aren't I cool? Because that's an ego thing. And, you know, where is that coming from? Well, why would you need to identify that? I'm not saying you do. I used to. And I still kind of do, but it's a problem. I'm trying to work on it. But anyway, it's like, where is this coming from? It's coming from inadequacy, or it's coming from a feeling of like, I'm not good enough or whatever. And that's why I have to establish this identity of, oh, I do this. And then, oh, what if people say, yeah, you just use reference and that's not cool. And therefore my identity that I've given myself as an artist is, notice how this guy's kind of getting angrier as I talk. Anyway, my identity is compromised, because it's like, oh no, people have judged me and they have determined I'm not good enough. So now I have to feel bad about myself, and, you know, I'm not really good and whatever. It's like, no, it's just about the story. Like, what are you trying to convey? Oh, I want this person to look angry and I want the lines to be nice, and maybe I'll use my fancy brush. Not that it matters. Like, it's not about the brush. It's not about the bunny. And I'll get lines in that are like, well, it's cool, right? Like, the less precise it is, often the more interesting and cool it can look. So anyway, I'm running out of steam. Did this make sense? If not, write in the comments. And also thank you for the warm welcome for everyone who did write in the comments and let me know, what you think. And even if you didn't, you just watched it and you got something out of the videos, I appreciate it. I'm glad if you do, and all the support. And it was very nice to come back to such warm comments. And okay, what do you know? What? Let's use size 250. See, isn't that cool? It just like has all this like stuff. Do you figure out that and use it to inform you about the next thing and the next thing. So yeah, I hope this helps, and thanks for watching.